Heidi Ho Winslow's.
Are we gonna do an intro?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool.
It's all in there.
Okay.
Y'all gonna know what we talking about in a second.
So I know typically we talk about optimistic things and making things better, but today we're here to talk about 4 signs that your relationship will not last. You got these 4 things in your relationship, it's over.
Damn. Because I know what we about to talk about, and I got all 4 of them
Dun, dun,
every
dun.
time. So here we go. So Carlie put that real succinctly at the top of this. But if you are in a relationship, and or if you've been in a relationship, romantic relationship where, you know, it just didn't work out, this episode could be for you to help you identify some things and maybe to identify your own responsibilities. And if you're in one now, it can help you to get clear maybe on some things that you can tell aren't quite right. But now we're going to give you a way not only to identify what the sign is, but also like how do you actually mitigate that and like calm it down. So pay attention, and you'll be able to get some tactical things that you can start to try for this or your next relationship or your other relationship.
Or your side relationship. But just to make you a better person in general and to interact better and more healthy with the ones that you love. I thought this was super interesting. I listen to hella podcasts and read articles and all kinds of stuff. And I continuously heard about the Gottman Institute and the Gottmans and their studies on relationships. And doctors John and Julie Gottman have done over 40 years of groundbreaking research with thousands of couples, specifically on like love and relationships and marriage and what makes things last. And so throughout this and writing over 200 academic journals and 46 books and all kinds of stuff, they came up with these 4 horsemen, as they call them, that are over a 90% accurate predictor of divorce. So if you have these 4 things in your marriage, they specifically said divorce, but in your relationship, then most likely over 90% accurate is not going to last. And these 4 horsemen are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. So that's what we're here to delve into today.
So criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. If you have those 4 things, they're saying it's a 90% chance your relationship will not last. But I wonder, like, why would they come up with those core things instead of saying, like, you know, cheating in a relationship? That's a sign that it's not going to last. Or maybe lying, or, you know, like things that are very obvious, kind of attacks against a relationship, perhaps. Like, why wouldn't they, you know, you have a list that sounds like that?
Man, that just made me think of the unforgivable, the old school YouTube videos that would not be okay today.
They're not that old. Actually, y'all probably are, to be honest.
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A fraud.
Yo, Jay is going to love this episode just from that off top. But I found a quote from one of their therapists at the Gottman Institute, and I loved it. And she said, these 4 things are predictive of divorce because they each indicate a disconnection or opposition in communication. I know.
No, not communication issues.
So rather than expressing their emotions or needs, the couple is engaging in unhealthy patterns, which disrupt their ability to connect and grow with each other. So yes, cheating is a terrible discretion.
But that's like what's happened if you're already disconnected.
Bam.
Oh,
Bam.
Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling are more so these cornerstones of showing you have an unhealthy pattern of communication. So communication is the key.
Absolutely. And if you can't connect with your partner, how can y'all fix anything or grow? Like, it doesn't matter what it is. You can't grow if you can't connect.
You're going to be in circles. Trust me. Trust me, daddy. Okay. So what are maybe some situations? If we said things like cheating or lying or whatever you're doing is more so like the symptom or what happens because of these things, what are some situations that might trigger the contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling? Dang, I already got it memorized.
Boom, 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 baby. We growing today.
For today.
That's all we got.
I have to run this one back later myself.
One step at a time. So I think something that's huge are big life changes. So if a couple has a baby, if y'all get married, if y'all move in together, if y'all move across the country together, like anything that's big and can cause a lot of change and stress, I think that that's a huge thing that can spark these or at least make them more noticeable. or
I can imagine it may be too, because as you have big life changes, perhaps your contributions as a couple might change. You might have more on your plate, less on your plate, things like that. So there could be maybe more space for there to be resentment or anything like that. External stressors can also trigger those things. So financial insecurities, we all know when that check low, you be grumpy as hell. You be
everybody getting on your nerves.
Right, like don't look at me, I'm trying to fill out this application, like everything. So that's real. Loss of career, changing in your career, promotion, all of that is straight. Yeah, so far I have examples from every single one of these things.
Man, and external stressors are things that we can't necessarily change. You can't stop those things from happening. The economy crashing, you know, whatever, the freaking pandemic.
But they make it harder for you to be okay. Like, and if, you know, if it shakes you up, your own security and your own esteem, like especially with financial things and stuff like that, it's real hard to connect with somebody else in those times. And
it's kind of hard to connect with yourself. Like if you're feeling lost or you're feeling that, which can lead to substance abuse issues. And that's another big one. Yeah.
Okay, Carlie.
So yeah, substance abuse issues. Anytime you're disconnected, like your coping mechanisms can keep you from connecting in healthy ways with your partner.
And I can imagine, we all see in every movie, there's always that one drunk husband, or, you know, they always stumble around, they not doing nothing, and the mom or the wife is all angry, and yeah, like we get that. Another one is sarcasm, which I'm surprised that maybe isn't one of the 4 things or a part of those. But perhaps sarcasm is still a symptom of you feeling contempt. You thinking like, oh, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, whatever, and that turns into sarcasm. But that could be if you feel like your partner's being very sarcastic all the time, or if you find yourself always having something smart to say, it's like, all right, what are you really trying to say? What's really your problem?
And then the last one is like lying or a lack of transparency, and those are not the same things.
Damn,
but they
I cannot send this episode to my partner. It's over.
But I think that that can trigger that, like whenever you're not able to be vulnerable, and that could be with yourself, but also with your partner, like that can lead to all of these 4 horsemen. So these are some things that can trigger them, but it is not a limited list. The list probably goes on infinitely. And so as we go through the 4 horsemen, think about where you've done this in the past, where you've been on the receiving end of this, and maybe where you're doing it with your partner right now.
Yeah, because all of these common situations, it's like, whether you're doing them or receiving them, it all kind of signifies these 4 things are present in the relationship. And also, I think before we even get into a deep dive into each of the 4 things, I think it's important to also recognize that it may feel like a bad thing if it's like, oh man, we have these, or oh, it's not going to work. But also, it can be a good thing in progressing you actually making the decisions you need to make, because divorce, I don't think, is necessarily a bad thing. Your relationship has worked up till whenever, and now it's not serving you. So also, like, keep in mind that I'm not even necessarily telling you, I mean, you should fix these things in your communication, but if it's not on you, then sometimes it's not about trying to fix the relationship. Because if you're noticing and listening to this episode, thinking about the other person and how they're criticizing or being in contempt or whatever, then there's not that much you can do about that. So keep in mind, we're talking about what you can do for you. And keep in mind that if your relationship doing that bad, then, but I might be talking to myself.
Let
so
it
let's
go.
Continue.
But I love that focus on yourself, like doing what you can in a situation, but also if you keep giving yourself excuses, oh, I should stay because she this or because he, nah, listen to these things and think about how you want to be treated and treat other people.
Yeah, think about the actual health of your relationship, not what you hope it would be or wish it would be.
Yeah, we're not living in an ideal world. We're living in the real one. So this first one is criticism. The first of the 4 horsemen is criticism. And I think it's important to recognize that a criticism, like a critique, is very different than, or actually, criticism is very different than just offering a critique or a complaint to your partner. Criticism is an attack on their character. And you start to dismantle that person whenever you start to criticize them. So for example, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and that part is important, that it's attack on their character, because you may not be trying to attack their character, but because, and you may think, well, this is a complaint, but it's the way you're saying the thing that makes it a criticism. And so now the other person is going to take it as an attack on their character. So there's a better way, if you're criticizing, to actually think about what you need to do and how to say it, so that it's not an attack on their character, but you give an appropriate complaint. So this is something that you can transform if you pay attention to it.
Yeah, and I think especially, you know, how we've all grown up and just our wording, sometimes we're not as thoughtful. We're like, well, I didn't call him, I didn't curse at her, you know, or whatever. But if you listen to the difference in like these next two statements, you might recognize that you're actually criticizing your partner versus just voicing a complaint. So a complaint sounds like, I was scared when you were running late and you didn't contact me. You hadn't called me all day. And I thought we would agree that we would stay in contact, you know, throughout the day, especially if you're running late.
But a criticism sounds like, you never think about how your behavior has affected other people. I don't believe you that forgetful. You're just being selfish, dog. You should have called me. You should have let me know. Like, you never think of nobody else. Y'all
see the difference? And y'all see how
that's the best that criticism came out.
But also the superlative. You never, like, I hate those. I threw
that in.
Oh, man.
Oh, no, yeah, that's in there too.
I'm about to say, definitely think about whenever you're using those words, because always and never are usually not always true.
That automatically is a criticism to me where it's like, oh, I don't never do anything. And that's the first thing, you know, when you say a never, always, something like that to somebody, one of the first things they start doing is like, wow, so last week I didn't call you, or like yesterday, remember this? Or it's like, now you feel like you have to give like that you're wrong. Like you're literally, what you're saying is wrong now, instead of that, hey, how you felt about what happened and you wish this other thing would happen.
And if you notice that you and your partner are critical of each other, don't fret. It doesn't mean that y'all are going to break up or not meant to be. It's just that it can become pervasive in the way you communicate with each other, and then it can cause the other person to feel attacked. It can cause them to feel rejected and hurt, and then y'all come into this like attacker victim mode, which does not allow any relationship to succeed. And so just recognizing whenever y'all aren't voicing complaints in a way that honors each other, and whenever you really start attacking, like I think that that's whenever you should, you know, flip the switch and work on changing how you talk to each other.
And this example immediately makes me think of parenting also. And I can imagine that if this is something that you have difficulty with, you probably got it from a parent or a caregiver, because I can imagine like that the patience that also goes into like with a child, like even things like, oh man, you should have got that last shot, or like the way you kind of say things or talk about their room, their grades, whatever, right? Imagine how your parents talk to you, and perhaps that's also kind of just how you see expressing yourself in that way.
And so thinking about a better way to express yourself, if you notice yourself being critical or others, you can start to practice this antidote to criticism. It is called a gentle startup. And so changing your language from criticizing the other person to complaining. So the complaint will focus on a specific behavior and not attacking your partner. And so complain without blame. So that's the first thing, is complain without blaming your partner. Like saying, oh, you suck, you didn't call me all day. That's not how that is. Say, my feelings are hurt because we didn't talk and we communicated that we would be more in contact with each other throughout the day, or something like that. Like that could be a way to do it.
Yeah, we've talked about that before too. Try not to say try not to say you, but try to stick to I statements. Another way to think of ways to formulate that soft startup is to think about like, what do you feel? What do you need? And again, I know this is obviously like everything is easier said than done, because quite frankly, when you're in this kind of space, you be needing to pause, because it's hard to like reformulate. But if you could take that pause, it's like, all right, I'm mad because he didn't do a thing, but like, what do I really need? You know, how do I actually feel? And then that's what you start to say. You say, hey, I feel like this and I need this. And that will kind of give you your template.
And so an example of a criticism in this would be like, man, you always are talking about yourself. Like, why are you so selfish?
And the antidote to that would be, you know, I'm feeling left out of our talk tonight, and I also need to vent. Can we please talk about my day as well? So that's what you need. And you're not telling them, hey, I don't want to hear you. You're just saying, hey, I also have a need.
And then notice that she said, I feel, I need, and that means you're checking in with yourself first, and you respectfully ask your partner to fulfill the need, recognizing that they could also opt out of that, and that's a whole other discussion, but you're not blaming them and you're not criticizing them, which opens the door for more communication.
Ooh, this is good. So I do this a lot, and then it ends up being like around the same types of things. I probably receive it a lot too, because I feel like this is one of those things where it's just easier to be like, dog, you not doing this or you doing this. But I know, for example, one thing that I always am critical of is like and you always being on the phone, or I might not say that, but then I start getting a little attitude. It's like, all right, dog, like, are we doing this? Are we doing this? Are we doing this? The other day, I was watching something on a big screen, watching something on a laptop, and I was on his phone, and I was about to have like an aneurysm. But at the same time, it's like, I know this ain't my business, but it's like, God damn, like, what do you choose a thing to do? But anyway, I digress. But so I'll kind of get an attitude, and I always kind of say something about it. But what ends up happening though over time, because like that kept coming up, is we did get to a place where it's like, all right, after we kind of argue or after you say it in an attitude, then it comes up, it was like, well, actually, I would like to feel a little bit more desired when I'm around, or like if we're doing something, or, I'd like for us to have set aside time. Because I know if you're around somebody all the time, of course, you're not going to always be looking them in their eyes. But it's like, hey, can we have some set aside time where it's like, we're just focused on
each other,
spending time with each other, something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So we started to get to those things, but now it's the difficulty of like in the moment, A, letting it fly sometimes. It's not that deep all the time. But then B, if you do feel some kind of way, it's like, all right, what's a better way to just start out there instead of it being like, man, what's wrong with you? And then it goes back and forth, and then you get to that, So that's a process. But that's the one criticism I think of. I'm sure there's a million others if you ask. But I'll have to think about what is that's how I feel and what I need.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue. What it always comes down to is because even, let's say, for the most part, people don't actually know how to articulate their needs. Stay tuned for that. But anyways, if you do, you also feel really vulnerable, saying like, I actually want to feel desired when I'm around you. I want to feel wanted. Like I want to feel a connection. And then that also opens you up for them to say no, for rejection. And so that's scary. So it's like, well, let me just get attitude instead, because an attitude like anger, I don't want to have to say anything,
but whatever.
Yeah, anger kind of feels much better than like vulnerable and nervous. And so I think we tend to lean into that as opposed to just opening up and asking for what we want often.
But also, and not to make this too much of an aside, maybe this turns into another episode or another topic, but I also wonder what the relationship is between your needs and then insecurity too. Because sometimes also it's like, dog, like I said, if it's like, oh, I need you to pay attention to me like 24/7, and that's honestly how you feel, which sometimes that is how I feel. But it's like, I know in my head, like, dog, like that's not what you need. Like, just because, maybe if he looks at me all day, like he won't think about or laugh at or engage in anything else, and I'll be like the core of everything. And so I feel like there's kind of like, but that can go a little too far to where you still need to recognize where you might need to chill out a little bit as well.
Oh, I think that's
before
huge.
You just, even if you're trying to say, I feel this, because then all day, if you're like, yeah, I feel like I need more time, it's like, all right, now, like, you need to have a life, basically, at that point.
And we will have a whole episode on needs where I think we can delve more into that.
Okay.
But the next horseman is contempt, and criticism can lead to contempt. And so contempt is when we communicate, and when we have contempt for somebody and resentment, it's when you're mean. It's whenever you start disrespecting that person and maybe mocking them, like you're always sarcastic, or you're calling them out of your name, or making fun of them, like me. Like whenever you start doing things like that, like eye rolling, like very obviously, and just kind of very being disrespectful.
Also, when you have contempt, you are making another person feel despised and kind of worthless. So it's almost like you're trying to put the other person down. And it comes up again when you're not speaking up about your needs, or you're kind of trying to suppress them. This is beyond criticism, because while the criticism attacks character, contempt assumes a position of moral superiority over them. So I'm going to go back to my own example, because this is going to straight up continue. So now it's contempt when he's watching something on a laptop, TV, and phone, and I go like, like, come on, bro. Like, so I thought you were supposed to be getting work done. Or it's almost like I'm trying to make you feel like, well, I'm over here doing something productive, or I'm not looking at 5 different things, or it's like, you're not good enough, or why are you doing that? Or like, yo, can you not focus on anything? Or, it's like taking it to the next step is like, it's like I have an attitude because I'm kind of like feeling like I'm more superior at that time.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's because we often judge others on their actions and us on our intentions. It's like, because we know when we're by ourselves, we be looking at everything, the TV and the laptop and the phone sometimes. But when you do it, it's because I'm working and I'm looking at you sideways like you ain't got shit to do. And so there's an example is like, also think about it like an example of another source of contempt is like, why are you tired? Cry me a river. I've been with the kids all day running around like crazy just to keep this house doing, and all you do is come home from work and lay on the couch like a lazy person. Blah, 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 blah. I don't have time for this. You play those stupid video games. Like, if you've noticed yourself like demeaning other people's activities or hobbies or things that bring them joy, I feel like that's a good indicator that you should probably check yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely something to catch. And an antidote, Jesus Christ, I don't even know if that's a word. The antidote to that is building more of a culture of appreciation and respect. So while contentment shows up in statements coming from moral superiority, like sarcasm, cynicism, calling by a different name, out their name, rolling your eyes, sneering, comments, etc., contempt being destructive and defeating, the antidote with that is regularly express appreciation for the small things. Show gratitude, show some affection, show some respect. As often as and easy as it is for you to like have something to say when they're doing something you don't like actually say more positive things out loud or react to the things that you do feel good about. Kind of go against that a little bit by also not always attacking, but to give them the praise that they deserve as well.
Mm-hmm. And contempt is important because it's the single most important predictor of divorce. Of the four horsemen, contempt is the single most predictor to divorce. And so you should avoid it at all costs. But when thinking about building up this culture in your relationship of appreciation and respect, also thinking about how that makes you feel. Because the more positive you feel, the less likely you are to express contempt or have anger, that's unexpressed to other people. And so I've heard that, for every... for every one negative interaction that you have with a partner, they talk about how it's important to have 5 positive reactions with your partner. Now think about how often that actually happens. So like every time that y'all get into a fight, like every time you have something crazy to say, do you also have 5 positive things to say, or 5 thank yous, or 5 things that, you noticed that they've done in your life? So just kind of notice that ratio of like what kind of conversations you're having and how you're talking to each other.
And I've always talked about this as withdrawals and deposits, like in an account. And so, it's okay when you have something to say sometimes, even in a healthy way, like a criticism. Not a criticism, a complaint or whatever the right way to do it is. Or, if you get smart or whatever, but then it's like, hey, you can only withdraw so much money from the bank account before it's just depleted. And so being sure that you also deposit is very important. And I like the idea to try to deposit more than you withdraw. Don't make it phony. I talked about before how my parents used to always be like, say 2 nice things every time we said something bad to a sibling. And I used to always be like, yeah, you draw good and you're funny. Like, we used to always say the same things every time, like, you draw good. But, like, it's still annoying to have to do that. But I think it was a good practice because this also kind of makes me think about, this antidote makes me think about how it's like, how you your perspective of the thing is, like, still going to affect, like, how you really feel. So you really can kind of choose to, like, all right, let me focus on, like, something positive, or what's a good thing about him right now, or what's something I like, and like just try your hardest to like switch and reframe, because there are the positive things there, hopefully, but you're kind of just not focusing in on them at the time. And that can help you to also remember and think about like how big, this is, like from a higher viewpoint, like, all right, maybe this thing isn't that deep, or maybe it's not as big, or, it's just a small whatever thing that you can kind of at least let slide sometimes, maybe not all the time, or maybe not even at all, but depending on the thing. But just give yourself more perspective.
And I think that's so important. And then there's an example, and this reminds me of Dr. Sandra Espinosa. So a contempt statement is, you forgot to load the dishwasher again? God, you're so lazy.
I say that because they don't be cleaning up after they cook and stuff. The antidote. I understand you've been so busy lately, but could you please remember to load the dishwasher when I work late? I really appreciate that.
And the difference there is it's a respectful request, and then it ends with appreciation. And so I'm much more likely to do something if you come at me like that than the first way.
And even if they respond with that, like, dang, well, I'm busy too. I've been doing stuff too. At least like you said it the way you're supposed to say it.
And that goes straight into the next horseman. Defensiveness.
Damn, this one hard too. So so far I'm 2 for 2.
Man, I'm
on me doing them for sure. And I'm sure I received, but
I've definitely been 2 for 2. Like, I haven't talked about mine, but I think contempt was one of the biggest ones in my past relationships because I just wasn't great at voicing what I need. So anytime we would have a little spat, it would go into, just, rah! It's like, whoa, this was not a great reaction for what happened in the moment. Is because I had all this pent up aggression from things I didn't say. And then I'm definitely defensive and working on it.
Yeah, I get accused of this every other day too. 3 for 3.
Man, you batting out the park today.
I'm wildin'.
But defensiveness is typically a response to criticism. So you're not, sometimes you do these things just out of it, but sometimes it's also a response to criticism. It's whenever we feel unjustly accused and we start fishing for excuses. It's also whenever we play the innocent victim so our partner will leave us alone and back off.
It's also reversing the blame. So you're trying to make it the other person's fault. And it's a way of blaming the partner and avoiding your healthy conflict management. So this is never successful. And our excuses kind of just tell the partner that we don't take them seriously. And that we won't take responsibility for our mistakes. Oh, that's what they're saying? God, dog. So I got all kind of personal things.
Repeat that statement.
So I always get accused of like, man, you never take accountability for things. And it's like, yeah, I do. Like, I did a thing, or I did this or that. But I think because I always feel like, and I've expressed it too, like, yo, it feels like you're always like criticizing all the time. So it's like the more it feels like somebody's attacking you, like, I'm like, yo, that it feels like you're attacking my character. And so it's like, of course, I'm like, I'm not just gonna sit here and take that, like, bro, and like, no, I'm not that person. I'm not this all the time. I'm not, all these things that like just makes you seem like you're just a bad person. And so I feel like it probably is kind of natural to be defensive if you feel like you're always being accused, because just so much. And then it's like, yo, but don't look at your things that you do. And it's like, bro, like, we are human beings, and like, well, give me some grace because I'm still growing, and like, look at you. And you just want to flip that, because it's like, I don't want to accept those things about myself, whereas it could have been true that those things have been or are parts of my life or my communication style or whatever the problem is, but could have been expressed in a way that was, I don't know, connect better, or I don't know, or at least not pile it all on top of each other. It's just a lot. So I can see, as somebody who is defensive or has been called defensive, it's like, well, you try to explain why. I don't know if that's also being defensive, but it's like, well, you're always like criticizing, like you're always saying this. And like, if somebody says you're this, it makes you want to be like, well, I'm not that. I might be this, but I'm not that. And it's like, bro, let's like bring it down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and I think justification is part of that too, because I noticed that part in myself too, especially if I feel like my character is attacked. Oh, I'm on. Like, I'm very defensive, and I start giving facts and all these things to combat it. But it's like, it's a way that our partners, sometimes in critiques, sometimes there's a little bit of truth in critiques and the things that people say. They might not say it well, but there might be some.
Be a lot. Yeah, but I'm not gonna receive it now.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just a whole bad person. Like, all right.
Yeah, all right. Well, if I'm such a bad person, bye. Like, whatever.
Right. They ain't going nowhere though. So, like, well, all right then. So, example of this is if I asked Carlie, did you call Betty and Ralph and let them know we're not coming tonight, like you promised this morning?
I was just too damn busy today. As a matter of fact, you know how busy my schedule was. Why didn't you just call?
Wow. So, a non-defensive response can express acceptance of responsibility, admission of fault, and understanding their perspective. So the opposite of this would have been what?
Oops, I forgot. I should have asked you this morning to do it because I knew my day was so busy.
That's good.
That's my bad. Like, let me call them right now.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Damn, these examples are good though, because I like how it's like, oh, I did forget. But like, it's not like I'm a bad person. The way it's like, yo, I forgot. I should have asked you because I knew I was gonna be busy, but I just didn't. And I think in these moments, I don't even think that hard about like, what really happened like that. It's just like, dog, like I had stuff to do, and you're not thinking about like, well, I could have, but then. So I think that's interesting. I wish I had like a whole bunch of scripts I could just start using.
Man, and maybe that's something to look into. But a lot of this information comes from the Gottman Institute, and so we'll link them in the comments, and you can go do some research of your own whenever you're delving into this. But the antidote.
Oh yeah, every time that joint just don't come out right.
The antidote to defensiveness is to take responsibility. So defensiveness is defined as self-protection in the form of righteous indignation or innocent victimhood in an attempt to ward off a perceived attack. Note perceived, because sometimes people are not coming for us, but we act like and think that they are. So many people become defensive when they're being criticized, but the problem is that this really doesn't ever help anybody. And so instead of blaming your partner or saying that that's not me, that can escalate a conflict and lead to, you not taking responsibility, them not feeling heard. It's changing the way that you communicate, even if it's only for a part of the conflict. So, for example, defensiveness would be, it's not my fault that we're going to be late. It's your fault since you always get dressed at the last second.
Whereas the antidote could be, I don't like being late, but you're right. We don't always have to leave so early. I can be a little more flexible.
And so in that, they took responsibility for the conflict, so trying to leave too early for something, but still asserting that they don't like to be late. And this partner was able to prevent the conflict from escalating by admitting their role in it. And so this can actually lead to compromises. So thinking in those moments, because that's a very real one, like I do be getting dressed at the last second most of the time. And thinking about, where both people can state where they are on something and it can come out to a compromise. Like, you know what, you're right. But we don't always have to leave an hour early to get there.
These seem difficult to fix with an antidote, like on the spot. This is too overwhelming for me.
I think it's just a practice. We're not going to leave this episode. You're not going to leave this episode and just be magically fixed from all of these things and how we react. We've built up lifetimes of responding and reacting like this. But what we can do is start to be more thoughtful and start to practice. And so these are just ways.
Because one thing you can know and identify, especially, listening to this, talking about this, you can identify when you're wrong. Like, it's like, oh, dang, I shouldn't have said that. So maybe it's like, you can be like, hold up, stop. And like, let me think real quick. And then you could try, but sometimes it's still like, you'll try to say it. Like, I want to attempt to say this a more, way that's going to connect better or not be accusatory or whatever. And it's hard though. Everything you say kind of wants to be like, well, and it's like, I don't know what else to say. But at least like catching it, like we always say, it could be the start. So, all right. 4. I'm going 4 for 4 with stonewalling, which is usually a response to contempt. And for me, this obviously is a communication issue because we know stonewalling occurs when you withdraw from the interaction. And I do this all the time. It's like, all right, now all of a sudden I feel like you're just like talking at me, attacking me, and I'm just shutting down. Like, yeah, I'm over it. Like, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to talk later, or I might walk away, whatever. I'm down for that. Shutting down and simply stop responding to their partner. So then you might get like, oh, so now we're just going to not talk. Like, we're not going to communicate about it. And really, but what I've been wanting to say is, well, I don't feel like this is going anywhere at this point. So what's the point? Rather than confronting the issue with the partner, so stonewalling it makes it is more of like a evasive maneuver. Like, you just want to tune out or be busy or distract yourself, or like, I'm just not going to engage you anymore. But why is stonewalling so bad? Why? Because I've heard this obviously multiple times, but like, why is stonewalling bad when it might be like, hey, like, I don't want to wild out in a response, or it's like, you're not communicating with me with respect or appropriately, and I'm just like over it. What's wrong with that?
I don't think there's anything wrong with withdrawing yourself from a situation and setting a boundary. I think the difference with stonewalling is that it becomes habitual and keeps you from avoiding it. You keep avoiding dealing with issues. So I think it's stonewalling whenever you refuse to address things and actually communicate, and that's the issue. Like, it's not like, hey, I need a day, or I need 20 minutes, or I need to go take a walk and I'll talk to you in 2 hours. It's like you just stop talking to them and you like leave them alone. And it's like, well, how can we ever fix things if you're always shutting yourself down? And so it's important to note that stonewalling like happens after a while. Typically it's like, a buildup of contempt, a buildup of criticism, and all these things that are happening. So it becomes a big thing where you just refuse to talk about stuff.
And I would say it's kind of like, or from my experience, kind of when it's like you stop feeling safe talking. It's like, oh, no matter what I say, they're gonna do this or say that or whatever. So you just kind of stop. And I would say, and reading this, I agree, it's a result of feeling physiologically flooded. So it's just like, yo, like, like kind of like burnout, or like you're just shutting down. Like, I just can't do anymore. And I don't know if it's as an introvert or as a person who's just, my brain is already very busy all day. It's just like, I don't have time for this. But when we stonewall, you're just not in a physiological state where you can really discuss things rationally. So to your point, maybe it can be more of a, hey, can we just come back to this in a few minutes? Because sometimes that is all it takes. Like, usually we'll come back to it, but it's like right now, I like, this is doing too much for me.
And I think that that's a safe boundary to set for yourself, and a very important one. And your partner should understand, like, them trying to force you to talk about something in the moment is not healthy either. But it's a way you could take that break if you notice you starting to, if you get angry and you start to cry, if you notice like you starting to black out or whatever's happening, you can say, hey,
you be blacking out.
Dog,
like,
if you don't leave me alone, I'm about to freak out on you. But you could say, instead of that, hey, I'm feeling a little too angry to talk about this right now. Can we take a break for like an hour or two, or maybe even a day, and come back and talk about it tomorrow? It'll be much easier to have this conversation and walk through this once I've calmed down.
Okay. So an antidote to stonewalling then, what are some things, or what can we do instead of stonewalling, I guess?
Man, so it talks about being physiologically flooded, and that's what happens whenever our body is in fight or flight. We've talked about this before, but running through it real quick, it's whenever your body's trying to keep you safe and alive. So your body thinks that you are in a life or death situation. You're not thinking clearly. You have the stress hormone racing all through your body. Adrenaline is pumping, and you need to feel safe. So a way to stop stonewalling is, first, I would say, set a boundary with your partner, but second, to soothe yourself. So by taking 15 or 20 minutes to take a walk, to meditate, to practice some breath work, to get your body physically out of that fight or flight response so that you can start to think clearly. Because whenever you're in that elevated response, you're not able to think clearly. It's actually scientifically proven that you're dumber whenever your body is there, because it's literally just trying to keep your ass alive. So anything you can do to help dissolve that anger and get you, maybe not even anger, but dissolve that stress and get you back on a level playing field. And then the Gottman Institute actually, throughout their 40 years of studies, like, gave couples 15 minutes of a break. Like when they were arguing, like in the lab or wherever they do their testing, they made them stop talking for 15 minutes. And whenever they came back, like, they couldn't talk about it, but just 15 to 30 minutes going to read magazines. You can't talk to each other. You have to chill. But whenever they came back, their heart rates were lower. Their interactions were much more positive and productive than the couples that did not take the 15 to 30 minute break.
And this might not just be stonewalling or stonewalling in itself, but I also kind of notice too sometimes, like, you can be trying to go into a discussion, like, it's a conflict, for example, and you're not trying to like argue, like you are cognizant of like, all right, let me make sure I kind of say things a certain way. I want to be clear. I wanted this to connect. But then, like, the more you kind of keep going and back and forth, it's like, all right, then it starts turning into like, all right, well, da-da-da-da-da, like all that stuff goes out the window. So this kind of makes me think about just the importance of just taking that pause, like, whether you're about to like stonewall or whether you're about to just like revert back. It's just like, yo, let's just come back. So I like that kind of example of like, let's just take a break and come back to it. What are some other like examples of what we can say here?
So if we're getting into it and someone's like, hey, we've been going through this over and over. So the back and forth, like you said, I'm so tired of reminding you, like, look, hey, honey, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now and I need to take a break. Can you give me just 20 minutes to go, relax and get my head together, and then we can talk. And so that keeps you from exploding on somebody. It keeps you from saying things that you don't mean in your heightened state of not being as intelligent as you actually are. And then you're able to calm yourself down so you can make more rational decisions and not lash out on people.
And the 20 minutes is important. That's actually from the study as well, because they said it takes your body about 20 minutes to physiologically calm down. So during that time, avoid your thoughts about like, man, I can't deal with this no more. Try not to focus on those types of thoughts. Don't let it like stew in your head, but take a moment to maybe read something else, listen to some music, go for a walk, something like that, where you can like kind of get your mind off of it for a minute and then come back.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's important in general. I recommend that every single day. But in this moment, it's really important.
Well, so I loved that episode. How about you? I know that was really good. Carlie had this framework in here that from what she had heard on that podcast, and I like it a lot. I think that was very helpful for me, and it's interesting because I feel like it did kind of capture like all these spaces, right? Like my main issue, maybe at the core of everybody, their issue might be communication in some kind of way. But for sure, like, that's obviously, like, that's been my thing, like, in general with life. And so, of course, in relationships as well. And so for me, it's like, dang, I'm really like 4 for 4 on all these. And I think this is helpful, at least because now maybe when I'm having a certain thought or like having a discussion or whatever, I can maybe at least identify that it's one of those things. And then from there, it's like, all right, like I can think about what's the antidote or what should I do. So I like this. It helped me to break it down really well. What was it? Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling. Which one do you think is the hardest or would be the hardest for you to antidote and to like do better in?
I think I don't know if it's any one of these in particular, but the habit I think behind all of them is not being able to express my needs or not communicating my needs. Therefore, I will start criticizing and have contempt for you and being defensive and stuff. But so I would say I need to learn how to, and I'm working on it, but better communicate my needs. But I think I deal the most with defensiveness because I don't know why, but in the heat of the moment, I always feel like they're coming from my life and they're not necessarily sometimes, but not all the time. And it's like, how can I, pause and react or respond in a better way instead of reacting?
I was going to say defensiveness as well, but I would say that because I always feel like I'm taking responsibility, but I'm always accused of never taking responsibility. So it's like, what else can I say? Or like, what am I not saying? What am I not doing? I always have to go back to that. So with those examples, they seemed so like clear, but also difficult to really pull out like the real, like, what is really going on, and in a way you can take responsibility without it feeling like you're just letting somebody walk over you as well. So I would say defensiveness is, I think, the one that seems like it would be the hardest for me to reframe or to do it the right way. The other ones are easier to identify as well. Like, when you're like rolling your eyes or feel some kind of way or criticizing, it's like, all right, the I statements and how I feel. So that's cool that I can at least see in which spaces I know, okay, I could probably do a little bit better and I know what that could look like. The defensive one, though, that one seems a little harder for me.
Yeah, same, especially because it's such a visceral reaction for me. Like, it just happens. And and it's like, how can we do this better? And so by no means are these antidotes like, apply the Band-Aid and you're healed. But they are a good starting point. And I feel like I learned a lot even about myself and how I communicate in relationships. So I want to know which one is the hardest for y'all to deal with or you struggle with the most. Hit us at Carlie's Couch on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Call us. Let us know what you thought of the episode or which one of these you're going to be working on this week.
Yep. And this week's shout out is going to us, kind of. So, Didi Hirsch, mental health services. They are a mental health organization based in Southern California. They have a few different locations, so you actually can go to the clinics. And a big part of what they do is suicide prevention. They have a suicide prevention center. They are the people who answer the suicide hotline when you call in this area for sure. And so they are always fundraising, trying to raise money to provide those services so that less people are taking their lives, getting the help that they need. So on November 14th, there is an event called Alive Together. And this event is going to be 2,160 steps. So it's actually a walk. So we're going to go to Exposition Park near USC. And we're going to walk and we're going to be raising money for suicide prevention. So what we have done, and you can go to the site, it's didihirsch.org/alive together, didihirsch.org/alive together. And you can look for our team. So I created a team for my company, Capsoch. So we have a Capsoch team. Carlie is on it. Shout out White Men Be Priest. Got a few other folks from our work who are going to be on the team as well. And we are trying to raise some funds. So if you go there, search the team, Capsoch Agency, you can make a donation. Even if you just give like $5, that's perfectly fine. You can give $20, 50, whatever your heart desires. But just want to put that out there that we are raising money to donate to our team. So look for us and help us out if you can.
Yeah. And then the link to our team, if you want to donate specifically, will be in the bio or in the episode notes, not bio, in the episode notes. and come support. And then our question of the week, Alexia, what is one difference between you currently and your future self?
One difference. Damn, I'm trying to get the mic all of a sudden. One difference between me and my future self is that she is less offended.
I like that. You had a deep answer. Bread. My future self got way more bread than I got currently. But a deep answer is
that could be the answer.
I'm about to say, yeah, that might be my answer today.
Damn, for once, give one answer.
Okay. Nah, see, now I got to give two. Confidence. Just more confident in myself, my decisions, and who I am.
And then the next question offline for y'all is, now how do you bridge the gap? What do you need to do to bridge the gap to that future self? All right, guys. See you next week.
Bye.